Hey everyone, welcome to part 1E of the Mech tutorial. This time we're going to be talking about our y-axis vector thrusters as well as flip and spin movements. So for this first part we're going to be covering, the parts we need to increase our numbers for, so that's aim parts and vector thrusters. We'll also be covering servos in this part, but they have a little different technique. So for our aim parts and vector thrusters, we're going to be selecting the entire, mass of these parts, and we're just going to be copying them in different directions. So we already have a mass of about 20 or so of them for about each, that we already have, and then we're going to be multiplying this by a lot so that we have more of these. It should give us, more power from these parts. They'll be better at doing their functions. We just got our aim parts. We'll do the same with the vector thrusters here. It's gonna make these little rings in our torso. Looks kind of cool, but yeah. So once we have these all test, generally this will make us faster and more stable. And I also want to point out that I kind of reordered the clips for this part. I recorded them in a different order than I edited them in, so I don't think I use any logic we haven't covered for this test, but later in the video I'll be flying around as really unstable again. Just if you do this first on yours, it should help fix that. And anyways, by the end of the part we'll be in the same spot, so that should be fine, I think. But yeah, I'm gonna cut this out. I flew around for a bit trying to test stuff, so move on to the next topic here. This is gonna be so this will be where we add our, more servos. The thing with our servos is that we can't really add 20 of them like we do with our other parts, because the middle part is already compressed. So I guess we could if we really wanted to, but I just went with 4 for each direction, and it still helped a pretty good amount. We just need to move the central ones apart a little bit, and then we can start compressing them. Since we are only offsetting them in one direction though, especially since only the middle ones, we can't do any more than we have to stay under 5 because that's the maximum compression limit. So just make sure we're at 4. That's probably the optimal number here because it's the most the game will allow us to put in one spot. Less than 5. So yeah. Once we've got our servos, we'll, I'm sure I probably tested this in the footage, but this was a really long part at first. It kind of still is. I apologize about that. So I just cut out a fair amount of it because I was just testing. We're going to be moving on to the next topic here, which is our y-axis vector thrusters, though. So see you guys there. Okay, so these are what we use to move up. We can, fly with them. It's fairly useful. So to start with, we're going to use our gravity sensor we added earlier, and we're going to multiply it by the mass of our mech. We can find this in the Ctrl T menu. It's if we select our whole mech with it, if you select anything with Ctrl T, there's a little thing in the bottom right corner that shows you certain stats about what you selected, like its mass and center of mass and a few things. So we'll be using this to scan the mass value of our mech, and then we're going to multiply it by gravity. If you multiply something by mg, it cancels out gravity, so this is, we're going to be using this to hover. I like having my mechs to where it has a, hover strength and a full power. That's basically that would make us, go faster, and more upwards hover would keep us at the same height. Pretty much the idea behind that. So I usually make I usually keybind hover to H and full power flight to F. We'll be getting to that in a minute, but yeah, that's what we're doing here. So first we need to, multiply our mass times our gravity, and then put it into we're going to be putting this into a switch box in a minute that's got keybind H. The on value is our multiplication, off value is 0. Just leave that, you can just leave that blank. And once we have our hover each flight, we're going to be we'll need a second switch box. This one's going to have, for its on value, we'll use the product of the switch box from the, we'll use our H switch boxes, on value, the little output thing it's got, sorry, not the on value, the output. And then for our off, well, oh my goodness, I'm fumbling, bro. Yeah, so for this second switch box here, we're going to put, output from our first switch box into the off value. For on value, it's going to be the full power constant integer. That's, going to give us as much thrust as we possibly can get through one number. It's the same thing we used for our, side-to-side movements. I'm just going to label this a little bit better, then we can, get out and test. Again, on mine, I'm going to try to cut down the amount of footage. It's just me flying around with my mech on this one, because there's a lot of that, and it's, I want these to be relatively short. I know that kind of fucked up on this one. It's 17 minutes, but yeah. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, but basically I got out and tested, and F and H worked fairly well, so we're going to, move along here. Okay, so for this next section, we're going to be covering flipping and spinning. We can use these for, several animations, and I think it's just helpful to have. So, if you notice with some of the other parts that we've had, we can, compress them to give them more strength. And while the same is true for servos, it's very tedious to add, to change our logic once we compress them. This actually makes it to where we can do that pretty easily. That's why we compressed our servos in the first place and kept them all in the same area. We don't have to separate them because their logic all comes from one block, so we can change it without having to mess with a bunch of circles. So we're going to be adding addition blocks to our, negative inputs from part 1C. Basically, this is so that we can change the value that goes into it. It's how we make, animations happen to our torso. So this circuit that we're starting here is going to make a repeated cycle of a number, basically. So it goes from it repeats from 0 to 360. We can use that motion to make something spin. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have a modulo part. We're going to, for one of them, we're just going to use a percentage. And the other one is going to be a clock multiplied by a value to make it faster. So I tested, this part took forever. I tested a lot of values. Generally speaking, the ones that I ended up going with was, so we're going to have a clock running at 1440, and then it's going to be, at 720%. So this will make it spin. My goal is just to make it spin as fast as possible. Also, we're going to be doing this in each direction. So for one of them, we'll be using the, W and S output from our driver's seat. The other one is going to be A and D. That just gives it the direction it's spinning in. The switch box here is going to be, this will give us a keybind so that we can, activate the spinning. If we didn't have this, it would just spin every time we press W, A, S, D. I usually like making this keybind ctrl, personally. It's within reach of your fingers, and you can, press it while you already have a direction held most of the time, so it'll just spin for you, or flip for you if you want to do that. So we have, we're going to make the other driver seat output now. It'll give us our, flips here, I believe is what this is. And again, this will probably look ridiculous without animations, but in part 2, when we do address the animations, these will be like a front flip or, spinning attacks and stuff. It's in my opinion anyways, it's useful for a lot of things. In fights, you can use it to shake people off of you. You also don't have to aim it very well because it's spinning. Okay, I just got flying on my base, that was crazy, but there's, some testing that goes on here. So at this point, our sideways spinning works, but not our flipping. That kind of took a while to get right eventually. If you just go with the values like 1440 at 720% for our sideways spins, and then 720 at 360% for our our flips, that should work. That's what I ended up going with by the end of the video. Also, if you notice it's going in the wrong way, like you press A to spin left and you spin right, and you can again make that negative and it'll fix it for you. So, and if you're wondering why the flips are at supposedly less speed than the spins, it's because when we're spinning our mech, we don't have to turn like as long of a thing. Like our mech is taller than it is wide, so it I don't know if this is a very good analogy, but like if you know how figure skaters will like turn their arms and to spin faster, I don't know if that's exactly how this works in the game, but that's that is basically what's going on here. And then also we have to factor in servo strength, so like since our mech is tall, it's difficult for our pitch servos to spin. It's harder for our pitch servo to spin it like in pitch than it is for our yaw servos to spin it in yaw. So if we make it too fast, they just don't work. Like they cannot spin our mech, so it has a lower threshold for speed. It still looks pretty fast though, like it since it's tall, it's like a longer thing spinning. It has more distance to it, so even if it's like half the speed, it's also like several times the length of the thing that's spinning. So it's still, probably gonna sound like a idiot here, but it balances out for the most part, at least when I've used it. That's not a very good explanation, I apologize, but that's if you do what is shown in here, it should work, is the plan. So since we added some servos and stuff, I don't know if I mentioned this, but some of it's recorded out of order, so be sure to just update the mass value relatively often so that your hover still works. And it doesn't, if you could get it exact, that would be great, but it's difficult to do that. Like, either you have to, highlight only your mech, which can just be kind of a pain to do, or a few months ago they added an assembly sensor part, which I was considering using, but you would have to add up, assuming I understand the rules of those right, you'd have to add up like a good 20 of those things to get your mass value, and it's just like, I just think that's a pain. I'm not going to try to add up 20 assemblies just for a mass value that I can get with one keybind, if you know what I mean. But if you do have something that's like, only has a few assemblies in it, doesn't have a bunch of joints like a mech would do, then you can use assembly sensors to get your mass value as well, and that will work for, for builds that don't have a bunch of, separate parts on them. They're great. Just, we are using a mech and it has a lot of separate parts. Okay, so by this point in the tutorial, this is like the end of the footage I recorded. We're, testing it, and it, for the most part, it should spin faster and more stably. So it's where we, stumbled upon 1440 at 720, and then 720 at 360 is like the, golden rule, golden percentage, whatever. Some point soon. Anyways. Sorry, I know this part is just a long period of just me testing. I tried to cut most of that out, but I don't know. I kept this one in, I guess. At this point, we're going to be testing it again. It should actually work at this point, I believe. Might not have updated the pitch value yet, but once that gets to 720 at 360%, it works pretty good. Okay, yeah, this is before we did that. It's like, you notice how it's kind of straining to move? It's like we're going in the right direction, but it's too taxing on the pitch servo to actually complete the spin smoothly. This is why we reduce it to 720 at 360. It's, more sustainable, and even if it's not a faster number, it's like when we involve the physics of the game, it'll still, overall be faster than if we were to just, give it the other ratio. I don't know what I'm saying, bro. Okay, yeah, this should be the last test here. Sorry, there are a bunch of those. Notice how both our flips and spins now move pretty fast. And also, you can combine them. It's, a little bit hard to tell what you're doing half the time, but it is possible. Most of the time I use these, it's just in, like, a mech fight. If someone's, like, attacking me, this is a good way to just, you don't have to... It's, like, pretty quick because you can just press Control while you're moving, and it's, you don't have to aim it precisely because it's spinning. Like, if you rotate, then you don't have as many openings to be hit since you're spinning. So, yeah. One more thing we're going to add is a new keybind. We already have F and H in this video, as well as Control plus whatever direction, but now we're going to be adding G. So, what this will do is it basically makes us stand perpendicular to the ground, and that probably sounds really dumb, but, like, trust me, I use it. I think it's useful. That is why it's in the video. So, basically, this keeps us more stable while we're on the ground. Like, if we're moving and we don't want to be knocked over or something, this will make it so that our pitch value stays at 0. It'll keep us upright more. And then I like to make this a toggle so that if we do want to, reuse pitch, we can do that. Generally, when I, use the mech, I like to have G on while I'm on the ground, and then if I start flying, I'll turn it off so I can use pitch while I'm in the air. But, yeah, that's a keybind as well. Helps, again, that's just to keep us from falling over and helps us work more stable. This was before I found the, golden percentage, so we're going to be moving on really crappily. And then, woohoo, I remembered to put a list of controls in this video, so these are all the controls we've had up, through part 1, I remember this time. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Peace out.